All right, everyone, this is episode 73 of the Gully Blanchard podcast. My name is Ryan Anderson, coming to you from the continent of California. This was originally a one-man podcast, and I did a three-man podcast with my buddies. Kind of back to doing a one-man show right now, talking to interesting people about stuff that I find interesting, whether that be the NFL, whether that be WWE, whether that be the NBA or sports in general. So you can check out the podcast on iTunes at Gully Blanchard. Subscribe, rate, review. All 73 episodes are up and running. We're also on nocoastbias.com, where you can check out previous episodes as well as past wrestling articles that I have written. Written ones recently about Bray Wyatt, CM Punk and The Rock, SummerSlam with Bret Hart and Davey Boy Smith. So those are all up there ready for you guys to check out whenever you have time. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. This week's guest is a guy that I am a huge fan of. I have learned a lot about quarterback play from following him on Twitter. He is the co-host and host of the Interceptable podcast, where you guys can check out anywhere. Without further ado, Cian Fahey, welcome to the podcast.
I'm impressed that you actually keep track of all 73, because I'm like 4 into mine. I've already forgotten how many I've done.
Yeah, through Podbean, they actually keep a list of all of them for you in different links. So it's actually been real helpful. And a lot of them we did a long time ago. So just to be able to have a good library of them makes it a little bit easy for me.
Yeah, I probably just try and forget some of the ones we're doing, because I'm doing one with Zach Harper right now, and it's just nonsense.
Yeah, I actually met him about a year and a half ago at a event for the Warriors when they were in the NBA Finals. I think it was actually the year they lost. It was like him, Amin, Haberstroh, and a couple other guys, Kevin Arnovitz and Kevin Pelton. Yes, thank you. Pelton and Jackie Mack. They were all really cool guys. It was a real fun atmosphere they did at the I think it was called like Soul Collective out in Oakland.
Yeah, they do. It's the Count of Dings, they're called now. It's their podcast network, and where their producer, Jade Hoy, is going to be producing the Interceptable podcast as well. So that's most of those people are my crew, I would guess.
Yeah, they were all really good guys. They put on a really good show out in Oakland. So the Interceptable podcast, I know that I've listened to the recent one about the Titans, but for people who aren't familiar with it, where can they check it out? What's it about? And give you a little bit of information.
It's in every app at this point, as far as I know. Any apps it's not in would be Abstract Ones, because we added it to all of the major app like iTunes and Overcast and Google Podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So if you just search the Interceptable podcast, it'll come up. It's we kind of have 2 podcasts within one. There is the main podcast that I'm going to do on my own, which is having conversations with people. It's generally about 2 hours, an hour and a half so far. And it's literally like there's no real structure to it. We start a conversation, we talk about whatever the specialist subject is for my guest. And wherever the conversation goes. And then the other part of the podcast is a thing called the Hot Take Route, which is me and Zach Harper talking about games each week in and week out. And it's not a very serious podcast, but we try and mix in some proper analysis with just general nonsense. Jessica Biel featured heavily in our Minnesota Vikings analysis this week, so that probably tells you a lot about where that podcast is going.
Absolutely. So I want to dive into the most recent game. I know we're recording this Saturday morning in California. The game that recently passed was the Eagles-Falcons game. And for those who don't know, I am a huge Eagles fan. Best sports moment of my life was in February when they won the Super Bowl. But I want to talk a little bit about the game that was played on Thursday. You had a tweet that really caught my attention. And like I said before, I've learned a lot about nuanced quarterback play from following you. One of the tweets that really caught my eye was you had said that this Atlanta Falcons defensive line wasn't afraid of the Eagles offensive line. And that was something that I paid attention to as the game went on. Can you give me a little bit more on what made you come to that conclusion and what you saw to support that?
It was all based on last year's playoff game, where they were probably the only team all year who properly contained that offense. Like, it wasn't a case of the offense beating itself, even though Foles played terribly in that game too. But it's the idea that the offensive line for the Eagles can generally overwhelm teams, and then you pair it with Doug Pearson's coaching, and Pearson knows how to set them up to be in advantageous positions. they're so versatile. Like they will trap. You saw it on Thursday night. They will run outside zone. They run inside zone. They will trap. They will power run if they have to, and it keeps defensive front off balance. And when you have Vic Beasley, Grady Jarrett, Tack McKinley, Brooks Reed, Derek Shelby, and all these guys who are not only physically strong but also quick and also aware, and they are able to match up one-on-one and react to the running plays, react to the misdirection, and still be able to set themselves up to rush the passer. And it's very rare. There aren't many defensive lines who've been able to do that against the Eagles, and it's kind of their one matchup thing, I guess. So one of the plays that stood out to me came, I think it was probably midway through the first quarter. It was probably the Eagles' first or second drive, where Brandon Brooks was being asked to work one-on-one against Derek Shelby, which he often is because he's the better guard. So you try and double with the center left guard to the left and trust Brooks one-on-one on the right side. And he went against Derek Shelby, and Shelby hit him, got close to his chest, knocked him a little bit sideways, and then immediately started to kind of bend the edge, basically, as a guard. Like, not a tackle, it shows you how much space he was in. But Shelby kind of got onto his outside shoulder, got underneath him, and started working his way around to the quarterback. And Foles got it out just in time. But it's not something you see that often. Normally, when an Eagles quarterback drops back, he gets space to work in, he can step forward, he can release the ball from wherever he wants and from whatever platform he wants. And that's not really the case when you have this Falcons defensive line there. And the key to it is that they can react to those different running plays, because when you can react to those different running plays, you're not in this reactive mode all the time. You can be a little bit more proactive as a pass rushing unit. It's just a really good defensive line. It's a really talented defensive line. The thing about that defensive front as a whole is it's very quick and it's very aggressive, and that works a lot of the time. And it especially works against this Eagles offense for whatever reason. It's just the styles, I guess.
Now, I did notice as the game went on, the runs that Ajayi were having, he was gaining a little bit more as the game was going on. Was that a product of the Eagles offensive line adjusting, or the Falcons defensive line getting tired, or just Ajayi sort of getting stronger as the second half went on?
Well, I think tiredness is a part of it, but also that it's kind of just one of these things where the Eagles offensive line and Ajayi himself are so good that you're not going to contain them for the whole game. And Ajayi didn't feature that much early on, which was surprising to me. So once they got him on the field, I thought he was pretty good. And so I don't really think there was that much of an adjustment there. It was just a matter of focusing the offense on Ajayi. But the other part of that is also Keanu Neal went out. And I know we think of Keanu Neal more as a coverage player, but having that guy, that safety in the box, it's basically another linebacker. And when you take out him and put in Damontae Kazee, you're taking a significant drop off there.
Yeah, and I noticed that too. As soon as Keanu Neal went out, I kind of felt that Foles had an opportunity to move the ball a little bit more down the field, especially, he got Ertz involved where he could, but I know Ertz kind of struggled. I saw one of the tweets where he said he had 3 drop passes in that game and then 3 all season. Was that an issue of just early game jitters, you feel, or what was the difference between last year's Ertz and the Ertz you saw in week 1?
Well, this is inevitable. Look, if you go back 2 years, you go to the Falcons. The Falcons had this season where no one dropped any passes and the offense executed at an exceptionally high level. And the Eagles did that last year. So this year, you're going to have guys revert back and they're going to regress. It's just the nature of being human beings. You can't be that level of consistent for that long over the course of your career. If you want to talk about Hall of Fame tight ends, guys like Rob Gronkowski, Jason Witten, none of them are as consistent over the course of their career as Ertz was last year. So last year was just a peak for him, I think. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. He's still a very, very good player. And last night was probably one of a low point for him. You can't really blame the quality of the passing because all 3 passes were fine. The third pass was a little bit low and had a defender coming in, but his reaction to it, he kind of stumbled over himself and he fell into the defender and dropped it before the defender hit him. So maybe you can talk about that one, him just being a little bit out of sorts and not really in the rhythm of his season just yet. But I wouldn't read too much into it. I don't think this is going to be a drop issue for him over the course of the year. He'll probably still finish the year with probably 5 or 6 at most and catch probably 70 or 80 passes or whatever it's going to be. I wouldn't be concerned about Ertz. I think Goddard had that one drop. It was a slightly underthrown pass from Foles, but you could also argue he was trying to protect his tight end a little bit from becoming safety. So the way I looked at that was Foles wasn't a great pass, but it was accurate enough that it could be deemed accurate, and it was an opportunity for the tight ends to cleanly catch the ball before he was contacted by the defender. So for that reason, I can't really call it a broken up pass or an inaccurate pass. So it has to go on Goddard, where Like I'm not 100% certain about him. I don't know how good he's going to be, but I do think it's going to be extremely difficult for him to be as good as Trey Burton was as a rookie. Maybe he's a better player in the long term, but Trey Burton was really, really good last year. Really, really good in many different ways. His consistency catching the ball, his ability to get open, but also as a blocker, his ability to move in space and work in space helped diversify that running game. So the tight end situation, I don't have any, like, calling it a situation or being concerned about it is probably overreacting in itself. But I think it was just one bad game and he'll be fine moving forward.
So I want to switch sides to the other side of the ball for Eagles fans. I was impressed with the defensive line, and the linebacking core looked a little bit better with Grugier, Hill, and Hicks. What were your overall impressions from the Eagles from the defensive standpoint?
I thought Hicks played well. He stood out a couple of times. I'm kind of still just interested in this defensive line and how it's going to, I guess, how the rotation is going to work. Just because you have so many of these players who are established, like you've probably got 6 guys there who should be starting and should be playing a lot. And I don't know, I didn't track it myself and I haven't checked it back yet. But I do want to see who is in there when the other team is driving for the game-winning drive. Who are their 4 best pass rushers in their eyes? I need to check that. I didn't check that. I wish I did check that. But on the whole, I thought they played well. The bigger concern there, I guess, was probably I don't even know if I can say it's a concern, because the defensive backs played pretty well overall too. It's not like there was anything that was a real problem. I think we all kind of focused on Matt Ryan being poor, but the defense is pretty good as well. The thing I'm always concerned about with this Eagles defense, and you saw it worked on the interception in the red zone. Well, it was in the red zone, yeah. On the interception in the red zone when Jim Schwartz rushed 7. That's always my big concern. I don't think those percentages play out over the course of a full season. I think that you'll get hurt more than you'll be helped there. And Julio Jones seemed to run a really poor route on that play, so you kind of got bailed out a little bit. So I have no real concerns about the front. I have no real concerns about the linebackers. I don't even have concerns about the secondary. I thought Sidney Jones looked fine. Ronald Darby was fine. Jalen Mills is still Jalen Mills. He got burned on that double move. That's going to happen all the time with him. That's kind of the book on him at this point. He's basically Sam Shields 2.0. So I'm optimistic about pretty much everything on the roster except the quarterback, and that's probably figure itself out once Wentz comes back.
Yeah, I know. I looked at the schedule moving forward. I know they start sort of the tougher schedule in October when they go Minnesota, Jacksonville, Carolina, the Giants, and all that. So I'm hoping, if nothing else, Foles can keep them in games for the next 3. I believe it's Tampa, Tennessee, and Indianapolis. So those aren't exactly world beaters. So I'm hoping to see a little bit more aggressiveness from Foles. But I want to get into what you said about the Falcons and Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. It felt like to me watching that game that the Falcons were forsaking Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley to force the ball into Julio Jones. And obviously Julio Jones is one of the top receivers in the league. But when they were down in the red zone, did you see that they went away from the other guys they have on that roster to try to fit the ball into Julio Jones? Or what do you think their issues were in the red zone last game?
No, I don't have any issue with them forcing the ball to Julio. Well, I shouldn't even say forcing. I don't have any issue with them throwing the ball to Julio a lot in that situation, because the Eagles were playing him straight up. They weren't double teaming him. They weren't tipping a safety to his side of the field. They were giving him a one-on-one matchup, and this is kind of why everyone was so frustrated with Matt Ryan, because he had opportunities to throw the ball to him. He had opportunities to get, like, at the very end of the game. That's not a difficult throw for Matt Ryan. That ball, at the very worst, that ball should have been underthrown a little bit, and then you give Jones an opportunity to fight for it. But when you overthrow it, it completely takes every opportunity away. There's no chance of of Jones making a play on the ball. I love the idea of them forcing the ball to Julio a little bit overall. I think they need to do that. I don't rate their other skill position players that highly besides the running backs. And the one play that kind of stuck out to me throughout the whole game, because it would have had a big impact early on, was when they went to that 3rd down on the opening drive, and Devonta Freeman moved into the slot, ran a quick out, was wide open, and Matt Ryan skied the ball. So, like, we can talk about Steve Sarkisian, we can blame him, and we can complain about how their offense ran. There were opportunities there. Matt Ryan just missed them. Like, Calvin Ridley had an opportunity to score a touchdown in the red zone on the 2nd drive, and Matt Ryan just didn't see him. He looked to the left, looked at Julio, came back to the other side, saw Ridley coming across, but instead turned around and threw the ball away instead of releasing it to him as he was breaking inside. So In terms of their game plan, I thought their game plan was fine mostly. I think my bigger qualm would be with the running game, where they kept trying to toss the ball outside and they kept trying to run outside too much. And the Eagles have too many athletes for that. They have too many speed. Like even looking past the linebacker core, like Malcolm Jenkins is going to sniff those out and closing the ball too quickly. So like they had one or two big gains off of that, but it wasn't worth the negative plays or the short gains that they committed to throughout the game. So I don't think the Falcons have a problem with Julio Jones' problem or even a Matt Ryan connection to Julio Jones' problem. I think this was one bad game for Matt Ryan, and I think he'll be better next week, and he'll be better over the course of the year.
Okay. Now I want to move on to, I know you spoke earlier about Trey Burton. He is now on the Chicago Bears. One team that I am interested to see how they play from an offense. That's the team I'm interested to see how they play from an offensive standpoint this year with adding Matt Nagy and some other skill position players. I know you're high on, I've seen some tweets about them in the past. What are your thoughts on, Nagy, Trubisky, adding what they've added on offense? What are your expectations for the Bears this season?
Well, Trubisky's big selling point coming out was his pinpoint accuracy, and you could see it as a rookie. He was one of the most accurate quarterbacks that I charted last year, but obviously his receivers didn't catch the ball very often, and they couldn't create any separation, and John Fox's offense wasn't looking to pass the ball a lot anyways. So no one really noticed that Trubisky was playing really well last year. He still has to figure out things from diagnosing coverages and decision-making and stuff like that, but that's normal, inexperienced rookie stuff. That you expect him to get better. So when you take him from that offense and you put him into this new offense where guys are going to be schemed up and the reads are going to be easier for the quarterback because there'll be misdirection and play action and package plays and RPOs and a little bit like the Eagles, to be honest, where you're going to have the mental weight kind of lifted off of Trubisky, and you can just let him focus on throwing the ball accurately and throwing the ball to open receivers with Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, and Trey Burton. I think that's going to work really well. And look, you never know how these things are going to pan out. You never know how these things are going to work with a new coach and with younger pieces and guys coming back from injury and guys moving from different schemes. But in terms of the talent on paper, they've got everything they need to be a really, really good offense. And this Andy Reid coaching tree, like the reason the Philadelphia Eagles have a Super Bowl win is because of this Andy Reid coaching tree. They may not like Andy Reid, but Andy Reid led to Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson led to Matt Nagy. So we don't know what Matt Nagy's going to be, but we have a blueprint of what to expect. I expect the Bears to be a really good team, and I think that Khalil Mack trade is brilliant for them.
Are there any quarterbacks, as we're walking into this season, starting tomorrow with week 1 on Sunday, are there any quarterbacks that you are most excited to chart this season that you're looking forward to seeing their progression and growth?
Well, I'm not sure about progression and growth, but I'm very interested in watching Ryan Tannehill come back because I've always had the belief that he's one of the better quarterbacks in football, but he's always been in dysfunctional offenses. And I think he has the best offensive line that he's ever had at this point. And it's not a good offensive line. It's probably a below average offensive line, but that tells you how bad his previous offensive lines have been. The thing about Tannehill is he was arguably the best passer on the move in the league. Probably Aaron Rodgers is probably the only one above him. And he was one of the very best deep passers. The problem is, besides the offensive line and protection issues, is they were always in this offense that forced the ball to Jarvis Landry. Like you would have heard the jokes on Thursday. The Nelson Aguilar display was everyone was saying that's what Jarvis Landry performance, that's what Jarvis Landry does. And that was the Dolphins offense for as long as Ryan Tannehill had been there. Everyone kind of put that on Tannehill and blamed Tannehill, whereas I felt that was more coaching staff things and looking at the offensive line not being able to hold up, so they were forced to get rid of the ball quickly and force feed an underneath receiver. So I'm interested in seeing how Tannehill comes back from injury. Obviously, it's the ACL tear, but it was early at the start of the year last year, so he's had a lot more time than most guys normally get. And I'm interested in seeing how he performs within the pocket, in the cleaner pockets. Is he going to be disciplined and patient, whereas before he had to move and throw the ball against pressure all the time? Will he be able to maximize his output, his statistical output in this new offense? And we kind of forget because Adam Gase chose Jay Cutler, and yeah, that was his fault. But you kind of forget that Adam Gase is quite a smart player, or quite a smart coach in terms of designing plays and setting his quarterbacks up for success. Last year was a disaster, but you can't do much with terrible quarterbacks. So, and without a dominant offensive line like the Eagles have. So, I'm interested in this Dolphins team as a whole. That's kind of partly as well because I think the defense is going to take a big step forward. But Tannehill's probably the guy. There are a few though, because Andrew Luck's coming back. If Sam Bradford stays healthy, Marcus Mariota is in a new system. You've got Tyrod Taylor in a completely new offense as well. So there are a lot of guys to be excited about this year, I think.
So with the Dolphins, I know they added Albert Wilson and Amendola. How do you think those pieces can complement someone like Ryan Tannehill, who's good on the move, or they're moving away from the Jarvis Landry, 8 receptions for 40-yard style of offense? Do you think them adding Wilson and Amendola will play to Tannehill's strengths?
Well, the key there is getting Devontae Parker off the field. Devontae Parker is a guy that everyone loves because of his size and how he looks, and he wears the same. And he had got comparisons to AJ Green and stuff like that, but he's never been anything close to that. He's generally been a bit of a liability, a bit of an anchor on the passing game. Albert Wilson is small and doesn't really intimidate you with his presence, but he's a good route runner. He's consistent catching the ball. He's probably not going to burn you deep downfield all the time. And he's probably not going to offer a great catch radius for you, but you've got Kenny Stills to fill that role anyway, so you don't really need him to do that. I think Albert Wilson starting and crossing Kenny Stills it's not a great receiving core, but it's a complimentary one. It's one that will allow Gase to do a lot more than he does with Parker or with Landry there. And then Amendola inside, like the only problem Danny Amendola has ever had is his health. Like, he's always been a very, very good slot receiver, a very, very good possession receiver. And if he's healthy, the Dolphins will love him because he's going to give them everything, all of the positives of Jarvis Landry without any of the negatives, without the constant drops, without the crazy personal foul penalties, and without just the general kind of recklessness that was in his game. So I think Amendola is a great fit there. I think Wilson's an upgrade over Parker, and I think Kenny Stills is one of the more underrated players in the league. So it could be a good receiving core. The problem is, once Amendola gets hurt, you're kind of looking at Jakeem Grant and you're looking at Parker coming back in. And if you have an offense that has Kenny Stills, Parker, and Jakeem Grant, suddenly it's a little bit more limiting, it's a little bit more inconsistent, and you're not going to have that complementary roles for each receiver.
I could understand where you're coming from there. Now, the main thing on top of the Eagles that I was interested to talk to you about is I saw recently that you went to the Muppets Museum, and that looked like the coolest thing in the world to me, or the Jim Henson exhibit. What was that like? Because I saw that, and there so many questions came to my mind. Because I watched. I mean, I'm a big, probably my favorite character out of all of them is the Swedish Chef. But what was that trip like for you? That looked like it'd be a lot of fun.
By the way, do you notice the Swedish Chef is called the Norwegian Chef in Sweden because they didn't want to call him the Swedish Chef?
Oh, really? I did not know that.
That was in LA in a Jewish museum. It's up in the hills there somewhere. Where was it? I can't remember the name. The name, some Latin sounding name anyway of an area. It was phenomenal. I'm a huge Muppets fan though, so I was always going to love it. The weird thing about it was it led directly into a Holocaust thing where you kind of went from Kermit, Miss Piggy, and all happiness, all colors, bright colors, and then you walk into this dark tunnel, and it's like 6 of 6 million or something like that, and it's like just pictures of people who died in the Holocaust. That was pretty weird and pretty uncomfortable. But the Muppet Show itself was outstanding. They had a little thing set up there where you could use hand puppets behind a little desk or a little bench, like a stall, and you could record your own video. The kids were doing it while they were there. They were loving it. I was kind of hiding in the background, being a little bit too much of a big kid, not wanting to do it because it'd be a bit weird for to be looking at me. But no, they had. I think the highlight of it was Beaker, Bunsen and Beaker were in a little case next to each other, and they kind of had the best setup there. I'm trying to think though. I think they also had Sesame Street stuff there. So you had like Cookie Monster and stuff like that was there. So that was really cool too. I'm trying to remember where it was because it was the name of it just escaping my mind right now. But if you're in California, if you're near LA, it's probably, I don't know if it's still there, but it was meant to be there for a while anyway.
Yeah, I'm in Northern California, so closest point would probably be San Francisco. I'm probably about an hour from there, but I know I'm heading down to LA and to go to Disneyland in 2 months. So I am going to try to look that up and see if I'm not sure if it was like a temporary exhibit or if it's something that's there permanently, but it is something that I'm going to head down to LA in about 2 months for a 14-mile Spartan race. I'm going to have to check that out and see if I can squeeze some time in to go see that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to search for it because I can't. It's annoying me that I can't remember where it was. But it was a traveling exhibit. But I assume it's staying for a while and not kind of going really quickly. It was a Jewish museum anyway. So if you do look it up, you've got some details there to find it. Okay,
I'll definitely give it a check before I head down there in a couple months.
They also had the thing the Muppets do at the start where they come out from behind the pillars.
Yes,
they had one of those set up. So you could go in there and record a video of you coming out from behind the pillars with all the music on, with all the Muppets, or you could just take pictures with you there in between the pillars with all the Muppets. It was really cool.
Oh man, I'm definitely have to check that out when I go down there now, because heading down there in about 2 months. So if I could squeeze that into a couple other things I've got planned, that would probably be one of the more exciting things to do when I'm down there. So I know we're kind of pressed for time here, but I want to give you the floor to kind of promote Pre-Snap Reads, the Interceptable podcast, where people can find you on Twitter. Where can people find all your work?
We're mostly exactly what I'm going to do behind me during the week. Actually, I've got it. It was the Skirball Cultural Center. So if you look that up, you'll find it. That's what I was doing, by the way, not focusing what I was talking about. But I'm doing mostly on the Patreon, where I'm probably going to do a lot of tape work there. The plan is to do some quarterback charting during the year again, and then there's a lot of podcasts. We're probably going to do probably 2 Interceptable podcasts a week, maybe a third one even. And then I'm doing one for Off the Ball in Ireland, which we're going to do every Wednesday, which will be streamed live, I believe, on Off the Ball's Twitter. So that's at Off the Ball. It'll be on my own as well, at CIANAF. So there's a lot going on, so I'll be pretty busy, I think.
Okay. Well, for this podcast, thank you very much for taking the time for coming on. My name is Ryan. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard. That is GULLYBLANCHARD. This will be on the podcast page at podbean.com. So gullyblanchard.podbean.com. Also, nocoastbias.com will be there. I do a little bit of writing for the Sacramento Kings. That is my hometown lifelong team, at aroyalpain.com. So this was kind of a bonus episode we gave you guys over the weekend, getting you guys ready for week 1 of the football season on Sunday. Cian, thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate it, man. You've been a huge resource for me to learn about quarterback play, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So until next week, I will be back next week talking to Kel Dansby about the upcoming WWE Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, some pro wrestling stuff. We'll probably sneak in some Yankees and Vegas talk. So until then, guys, be good, and I'll see you next week.